Nobody would ever even miss your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away from me, psycho!
No!
Whoa. What the fuck? How can that be?
Ever since the overwhelming success of Telltale Games' The Walking Dead, there has been a development of a subgenre within adventure games focusing on choice-driven narratives. Whilst previously, Telltale was almost exclusively producing these style of games, their success and following has naturally led to other companies wanting to use the format. And Life is Strange is such an example. It's an episodic adventure game from French company Dontnod Entertainment, which had previously made 2013's Remember Me. In Life is Strange, you play as 18-year-old Max Caulfield, who returns to her hometown of Arcadia Bay to attend the distinguished Blackwell Academy after 5 long years. Max is a quiet, shy, and kind of plain high schooler, despite her quirks and obvious talent for photography. She deals with the general day-to-day awkwardness and problems of being a teenage girl in high school, with all the drama and issues that come with it. And it's all pretty mundane, until one day she discovers that she's developed the ability to rewind time.
Can you
I
give me
actually
an example
did it.
of a photographer who perfectly
I'm a
captured the
human
human
time
condition in
machine.
black and white?
The story, based around exploring the day-to-day life of Max, is interesting enough despite how boring it may appear on the surface. But it's the repercussions of major events like the approaching storm, Rachel Amber's disappearance, and the implications of Max's rewind ability that are the most compelling. And it's these that are going to keep me invested in the series long term. Being able to rewind time as a mechanic and the ways in which it was implemented in this game, although interesting, are perhaps not as complex as I would have liked. This is the first episode of 5, however, so perhaps it's understandable that initial puzzles involving this mechanic would be simplistic, but I'm doubtful they'll get much more complicated. That being said though, they're satisfying enough. Being able to do something positive like save a little bird just warms my heart the tiniest bit. Now, having the ability to rewind time to alter an event or a choice you've made does of course remove some of the pressure from making the choice in the first place. However, I kind of like this. You can see how each choice plays out and the initial ramifications before choosing which choice you think is best. And since you never experience the long-term side effects of a choice, that surprise is still intact. Outside of this, you can use the rewind mechanic to change moments where you messed up or didn't know the answer to a question, and this is very useful, and it really feels like it's being used in a way that makes sense. If Max did mess up, going back and altering the past can open up new dialogue choices or alter another character's impression of her. It's surprising how much optional content there is even in this fairly linear game, and this game does actually reward exploration and interaction with other characters and items. Finally, if you like those quiet moments in The Walking Dead where you got to talk to other characters and find out a little bit more about them and the world, then you probably will like this game. However, the dialogue in these moments feel kind of question and answery, rather than feeling like an actual conversation. Speaking of dialogue, that's one of the biggest issues I have with this game, along with patchy voice acting and lip sync that's, well, non-existent at times.
You knew Rachel?
How can you know a prison? You just stare in awe. You just stare in awe. You just stare in awe.
I'm not surprised that there are issues with the dialogue. It was actually one of the problems I had with Remember Me.
This little Red Riding Hood's got a basket full of kick-ass!
But in Life is Strange, these problems are far worse, since it relies on dialogue a lot more heavily. And it's also trying to be teen speak. It feels an awful lot like that one teacher that's trying to be hip and down with the kids, saying things like YOLO, epic fail, and cray cray. It's really cringy, kind of painful, and at times the game used even more dated slang than that. I'm only about 3 years older than Max, and I can honestly say that it's pretty bad. The inserted slang and lingo just makes characters feel completely ungenuine, and the deliveries of certain lines just highlight the issues even more. I consider Chloe to be one of the better voiced characters in the game, but some of her lines just sound completely unnatural because of the problems with the slang.
We totally smacked his punk ass down, Max. He's no match for you and me now. That was an epic win.
In comparison to Chloe, Max's voice acting isn't that great, and because of this, it does make it more difficult to like her because her emotions just feel forced and she feels a bit flat. They really needed for Max in particular to have a strong performance because we hear her voiced by far the most in the game, as she also internally voices all of her thoughts and feelings.
Ooh, Dana's Facebook wall is up and running. Of course a popular cheerleader like Dana would have a million friends.
I don't think, though, that it's completely the voice actress's fault, because in some respects she was working with a flawed script. Some of Max's thoughts feel odd or don't even feel like actual thoughts, but rather exposition for the player. It's a balancing act that I feel they slightly failed at. I just don't find Max that relatable, and that's because even in this first episode, she feels like someone's interpretation of what they think a teenage girl is like, rather than feeling like an actual teenage girl. And given how unfairly bitchy Max can be in some of her thoughts, that's certainly the impression I got. Some of Max's lines and thoughts are just completely bizarre, and they feel like they were written by someone who doesn't really know what they were trying to talk about. Take this line.
I'm good to flow, thanks.
It genuinely horrified me when I heard it, but I don't think it was intended the way it came out. And also, girls just tend to think sanitary machines are hellishly expensive. But what do I know? That being said, though, Max is okay. It's actually the side characters that tend to be the most poorly acted, and currently the most underdeveloped. These characters at the moment range from feeling a bit bland to one-dimensional caricatures, and many of them just follow a rough cookie-cutter type of person that you'd expect to appear in a high school. You have the mean girl and her cronies, the dumb jock, the skaters, the entitled rich kid, and Captain Friendzone, to name but a few, but nothing's really been done with them yet to make them engaging or fleshed out. Even the characters that don't fall into types don't fare much better because ultimately they're just kind of forgettable. There is one final, minor thing that I would like to address, and that is the references and name drops within Life is Strange. In particular, the Spirits Within and Tomb Raider lines that were just the teeniest but shameless. I wonder who the publisher is.
That is a tasty plasma. Maybe I could sneak in and watch Final Fantasy Spirits Within. I don't care what anybody says, that's one of the best sci-fi films ever made.
The next episode will of course feature Kingdom of Hearts being name-dropped, as well as a reference to the well-loved and respected Square Enix property, Kane & Lynch. Despite my gripes with Life is Strange, I would recommend it, but only to people who have an interest in choice-based adventure games. It's a fairly pretty adventure game, especially for one that is a lot less stylized than Telltale's work. Compared to the Game of Thrones game, it looks leaps and bounds better. This game is definitely not for everyone because of its content and aesthetics, and I know a few people who find this game's soft-lit look a complete turn-off, so I recommend only buying the first episode if you're unsure about it but want to give it a try. It's not the strongest first episode, but if this style of game is your thing, definitely give it a go.
It would be so karmic to see her ass clown face all over the interwebs.